In the summer of 2017, two speedrunners were trying relentlessly to lower the Portal 2 speedrun world record. Those two runners were Can't Even and Msushi, and they are possibly two of the best Portal speedrunners ever. Months prior, they were trading the world record in Portal 1 any percent, before getting bored and carrying their rivalry over to the game's sequel. In Portal 2, both runners would quickly prevail over the former first and second place holders, Unluckiest and Oculus, and poise themselves on top of the leaderboard, prepared for another fight for first place. On August 9th, 2017, Msushi would strike first, taking the world record from Oculus with a time of 1:03:45. Can't Even would respawn in only 10 days, achieving a world record time of 1:03:25, almost 20 seconds faster than Msushi. It would take another month of speedruns for Msushi to get a time of 1:03:17, besting Can't Even. And as the times got lower and lower, one thing became clear. A time under 1 hour and 3 minutes was possible. Sure, world records were nice, but that 1:02 time became the true goal. Both of these runners would stream their Portal 2 speedrun attempts almost every day, trying to set this historic milestone in Portal 2 speedrunning history. It was a difficult time to achieve, but it was certainly possible, as both Msushi and Can't Even had some of bests in the 1:00 range. This means they could make almost 2 minutes of mistakes and still get a final time of 1:02. Yet throughout the multi-month grind, both runners could not manage to play within this margin. This would change on October 30th, 2017, when Can't Even was doing attempts. And to say that he had a god run would be an understatement. Can't Even's personal best at the time was a 1:03:25. This means that to be on pace to get the world record, he would need to be at least 9 seconds ahead, and to get the prestigious 1:02, he had to be 26 seconds ahead. So what if I told you that Can't Even was a whopping 1 minute and 9 seconds ahead of his personal best? This was beyond shocking. Forget 1:02, Can't Even was almost on pace to skip a 1:02 time altogether and achieve the world's first 1:01. However, this would change when Can't Even entered Chapter 8, as there was still one big run killer ahead. The first chamber of Chapter 8, creatively named Test, features a lengthy cutscene where Wheatley welcomes Chell back to Aperture Laboratories. If the chamber plays out normally, the player would walk to the testing course from the catwalks, while hearing Wheatley yell at the Franken turrets to solve the chamber. Once Chell enters the chamber, she can just pick up a Franken turret and put it on the button herself, solving the chamber. When the puzzle is solved, Wheatley blocks the ending door with a panel, and the player is locked into a 50-second cutscene. Upon completion of the cutscene, the panel is lowered, and the player can then progress. For speedrunners, 50 seconds is time that we simply just don't have. Luckily, skipping this cutscene is actually quite simple. The only thing we need to do here is a cube throw. By throwing the cube onto the button instead of placing it, the player can stand in front of the door while the cube is in the air. This means that the panel that is normally used to block the player from the ending door has the opposite effect, and it will actually push the player into the open door, skipping the 50 seconds of dialogue. This trick, creatively named Test Cube Throw, is an incredibly helpful trick in the speedrun, as 50 seconds of time save is a big deal in an hour-long run. The biggest challenge with this cube throw is that you only get one try at it. If you were to throw the cube at the button and not be standing next to the door, you would lose the 50 seconds of time save that the trick should be saving, as the cutscene will start and there is nothing you can do to stop or speed it up. If you're smart, you just sit next to the ending door and chuck cubes at the button until one of them finally hits. That way, you wouldn't risk messing up the trick. However, world record speedrunners are crazy. Instead of doing the safer approach, speedrunners like Can't Even and Msushi would toss a cube high in the air, right when they enter the chamber. While the cube is traveling through the air, they can quickly make their way to the door, and if everything goes right, they should touch the door right as the cube touches the button. This strategy adaptation would save seconds, literal seconds, and in turn, created a much larger window of error for the trick. It was common for the cube to land on the button just a bit earlier than anticipated, and for the panel to fling you out of the way, losing 50 seconds. Due to the fact that this trick is incredibly late into the run, almost 50 minutes into an hour-long speedrun, and because it can lose almost 50 seconds, the Test Cube Throw is considered a pretty big run killer. However, Can't Even had a god run, and you can't just kill a god. Doing some simple math, we can see that if Can't Even's -109 pace suffered a 50-second time loss, he would still have a 19-second lead, still on world record pace and with 102 potential. So, even though Can't Even wanted to land the test cube throw, it wasn't a necessity. Regardless of if he got the trick or not, the run would go on, and still likely result in a world record. That's why viewers were in shock when Can't Even's run took the most unexpected turn. Now I know there are a lot of questions you might be asking after watching that clip. For example, why is the clip in 360p? Or why is there no audio in the clip? Or even, what the heck just happened in that clip? Unfortunately, I can only answer one of those questions, so let's talk about what just happened there. Before Can't Even entered the test chamber, the panel had already blocked the door, and even though we can't hear it, the cutscene never started. Can't Even waited 50 seconds, 1 minute, even 2 minutes, yet Wheatley and GLaDOS remained silent. Since the panel is blocking the door, Can't Even has to wait for the cutscene to finish, and since the cutscene never started in the first place, and is unable to start, Can't Even cannot progress. This created a soft lock. Can't Even can still move around and play the game, but he had no way of beating the level. The average player here might reload a save, but speedrun rules at the time disallowed loading of quick saves and autosaves, meaning that Chell was trapped in the test chamber for the rest of time. This means that Can't Even's run, the God Run, had died. So how exactly did this happen? Can't Even himself did not do anything different from what a normal speedrunner would do here, as all he did was make his way through the catwalks and into the test chamber. When we start to think about it, the only way that the panel can activate is if the button in the test chamber is pressed down. And the first logical solution here is that Wheatley got his wish, as Wheatley talks about how he created the Franken turrets as cubes with legs so that they could solve test chambers without human help. So, is it possible that Wheatley's invention was a success, and a Franken turret walked onto the button before Can't Even entered the test chamber? Believe it or not, no. This is impossible. Valve game developers already saw through this flaw, and in order to highlight Wheatley's moronic invention, they hard-coded it in the game so that Franken turrets could not walk onto buttons on their own. Under no circumstances can a Franken turret walk onto a button, and this is well documented, as Combine Overwiki, a fan-made Portal wiki, states that if a Franken turret is made to walk up to a button on its own, it will tuck in its body and legs into the cube when it touches the button, making it impossible for it to solve the test screen at the beginning of Chapter 8 by itself. That test at the beginning of Chapter 8 is in fact the current chamber we are talking about. So it's incredibly ironic when we realize that despite Valve's best efforts, it is still possible for the test chamber to be solved by the Franken turrets. With the power of friendship, 2 Franken turrets can activate the button. If a Franken turret is laying down at a very particular orientation with its legs out, and another Franken turret walks into it at a very precise angle, the Franken turret on the floor will pop into the air and is able to touch down on the button. If a Franken turret touches the button before the player enters the room, the panel will activate and block the door, and the game will attempt to start the cutscene. Wheatley will start his line, but since GLaDOS isn't in the room to respond, the cutscene will cease progress, and the player will be locked in the chamber indefinitely. And just to clarify, this soft lock is all caused by bad luck. Everything about the Franken turrets is completely random. Where they spawn, whether they are laying down or standing up, whether they move or stay still, if they are moving, what angle they're moving at, and so on. This soft lock has nothing to do with what the player does. The player has zero impact on the movements of the Franken turrets. There is no special movement or RNG manipulation known that changes the behavior of the Franken turrets. The odds of 2 Franken turrets spawning in a manner to achieve this soft lock are next to nothing. Despite millions of people playing Portal 2, there are almost no reports of this soft lock occurring. I'm sure the situation must have happened to a couple of players who did not share this occurrence with others. But of the known occurrences, Portal 2 speedrunning legend Unluckiest reports that it has happened to him when he was grinding out segments of this particular test chamber. Router extraordinaire Kurzihao has been able to recreate this softlock in a simulated environment, and of course Can't Even has experienced the softlock on the run of his life. The exact probability of this event occurring is unknown, but it's such a rarity that if you, right now, were to launch Portal 2 and play this level over and over for hours, you would probably never get softlocked. However, there is still a happy ending for our protagonist, as 3 days after this failed run, Can't Even would get the first 102 time, achieving a final time of 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 46 seconds. And about that potential 101, let's just say that top times nowadays are well below that. Sure, at the time, Can't Even's run was the best the game had ever seen, but if speedrun history tells us anything, every time a runner proclaims that a category is dead or a god run has been achieved, it's only a matter of time before that achievement is toppled, and the grind starts back up again.